Hello, I'm the Angry Spork. To kick off Year of the Crossover 2, we're looking at another team-up between two grim vigilantes that we first saw in an Elseworlds book. Though it's not labeled Elseworlds this time for some reason. But anyway, written by Alan Grant with art by Eduardo Barreto and Matt Hollingsworth, we're taking issue with Batman Daredevil. Let's see if this comic makes us want to turn the page or turn our heads. The cover is fitting, uncomplicated but appropriate. They're perched on a rooftop, looking like they're eyeing the same target, or multiple targets, and ready to strike. Behind them is either the standard exaggerated moon about to crash into the Earth, or someone stole the emblem off the bat signal. The King of New York story begins with Chapter 1, A Devil in Gotham, which sees Catwoman swing to a rooftop. Well, that explains everything now. Selina wasn't secretly influenced to break things off with Bruce because a happy Batman would mean doom for Gotham. No. Someone just sold their marriage to Mephisto. Narration informs that she broke into the law offices of Shane, Murdoch, and Nelson to pilfer their files on Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin. While the narration isn't specifically Daredevil's, it does kind of speak for him, as he senses she's perfectly calm, but the two goons nearby seem rather skittish, possibly intimidated. Watching from nearby shadows, he detects the arrival of Gotham's chief protector, and can't have him interfering. He's gonna hate me for this. Well, yeah, who wouldn't be ticked off at a guy literally dropping in on you while 30 stories in the air, looking like you want a piggyback ride, but don't know how it's done? One man knows his fear, respects it, and has made himself its master. The other man knows no fear, and if he did, he would laugh in its face. He'd also call fear a nerd, push it in the mud, then ask fear if it was going to run home crying for its mommy. Batman counters, as he recalls the last time they met, so despite lacking the Elseworlds label, I guess this is in continuity with the first crossover? Anyway, their combined weight breaks the gargoyle head Murdoch was swinging from, and they begin plummeting towards Catwoman and the two goons, in the middle of their exchange. Rude. The heroes are saved by their long-practiced skills, but Selina and her buyers seem to narrowly avoid the falling Gothic decor by mere chance. Leaving her would-be customers to be beaten up, Miss Kyle takes time to flirt with Daredevil as she escapes, closing with, "Why don't you come up and see me sometime?" Up where? I know that phrase has seen a lot of use over the years, but here it just kind of felt off, out of place. Maybe because they're on top of the roof of a building. But maybe, given Matt's style of dress, they could have gone for a pun in terms of heaven and hell or something? Though maybe that would have only been marginally less out of place. After some costumed finger-pointing, Bats is interrogating the goons, but they'll only say that they were hired to meet Catwoman and swap her case for their duffel bag. Dee Dee, however, knows of a tracker in the briefcase the feline thief purloined. Batman quickly follows after tying the goons up, since it's his city. Matt explains that the case contains information on Kingpin, enough for a lawyer to put a brief together, but the lingering mystery is who in Gotham would want it. "Might have been easier if you'd let me know you were coming." Why? Did you give him your email address or Bat's cell phone number after taking down Two-Face and Mr. Hyde? Or perhaps Daredevil should have just gotten himself a megaphone and started announcing his arrival while swinging through the city. "New York breeds them tough. We don't ask for help," said the New York attorney known for putting compassion over cash when people come to him for help. Are you sure you're not confusing toughness with stubbornness? They agree to work together as partners, no orders given or taken, as we cut to Scarecrow perched on a roof. Narration says his senses are attuned to the pulse of the city, and feeds on the fear that runs through it, but he's not a metahuman, so it's really more like people watching for him, and probably fantasizing about what makes Gotham citizens pee themselves. Catwoman approaches because cats are good at maneuvering in the dark. Again, she's not a meta. I mean, it's Alan Grant writing. He's worked enough with Batman that he should know what he's doing. I guess he's just being colorful, but for some reason it just seems weird to me. She explains her run-in with bats and someone she didn't recognize, and mentions the tracer in the case as our heroes close in. We're almost on her.
Phrasing.
But it's not what it seems. And I don't know why Catwoman is posing like this. She's not facing Scarecrow, so who is she doing this pin-up impression for?
I mean, besides a certain proportion of the readership.
I also don't know what out on the tiles means, but moving on. To Daredevil's apparent delight, he notices before Batman that the tracker has been left on a cat. I guess it's a good thing he can still laugh about this woman threatening a case he's trying to build against his longtime archenemy. Catwoman's still willing to hand over the briefcase, but for an additional $200,000 for her troubles. Crane hands her a key to a locker at Grand Central Station and clutches the case, saying money is nothing, fear is everything, and how he'll soon take Manhattan.
I don't know, man. Kingpin is one thing, but he's gonna face some serious competition from the Muppets.
Does this seem weird to anyone else? Catwoman just trusting that she's not being played? She just upped her payment for the case and seemed to take Strawface at his word when he forked over the location and the key of payment. She's an expert thief, but this reeks of double-cross. But anyway, on to Chapter 2, Guns N' Roses.
Matt Murdock discovers Batman's darkest secret. Not his identity or his origins, but his surprising taste in music.
Narration points out how this pair don't really get along any better than they did before, as they arrive in the Batcave. Analyzing the glove that got thug sweat on it, Batman determines they've been subjected to fear gas to keep them from talking, courtesy of Jonathan Crane. He is typically a loner, rarely involving himself in organized crime, so what he wants with Fisk is still unknown. After setting up a list of crimes that might connect Gotham to the Big Apple, the two head out again. One goon leads them to another, and they end up with a time and a street. They close in on a truck that starts firing at them. Unless the driver's suffering from Gotham road rage, I'd say we got the right truck.
When the ice cream man says he's out of Fudge Ripple, he's out of Fudge Ripple!
Deploying a mat of trucks from behind the car, Batman takes out their tires and sends them through the guardrail and over the edge. But not to worry, because on the next page, Dee Dee is pulling the shooter out. So I guess they just drove onto unpaved road off panel? I mean, not a huge deal, just a little odd. The last page made it look like they were going to crash off the side of a cliff, perhaps. Then just skip to the goons on solid ground, more or less unscathed. The pacing just wasn't really great here. The henchmen are unaware of what they're transporting, and open the back to reveal boxes of Scarecrow dolls. But Daredevil does his best Admiral Akbar impression before they explode and the heroes dive out of the way with the lackeys. Scarecrow used us as decoys to get to us. You were meant to die too.
I think Batman meant to say that the delivery goons were decoys, since Crane using bats and a crime fighter he's never met to get to bats and a crime fighter he's never met doesn't make any sense.
Having saved their lives, Dee Dee gets his grim scowly face on, demanding to know the address they've delivered to previously. 50 miles away, a different truck pulls into a dark building, surrounded by armed minions, who open it to discover Scarecrow and several canisters. He figures they're all using guns he shipped to them before. You probably didn't realize the stocks were impregnated with one of my patent gases.
Huh. That would explain why my semi-automatic started demanding an epidural while screaming, "You did this to me! This is all your fault!"
Rather than making them fearful, this particular gas was intended to make them all highly suggestible, so Crane tells them they're switching loyalties, free of charge, with Kingpin as their sworn enemy. But it doesn't entirely take, since a couple guys still aren't on board. One in particular seems to have drawn the ire of the rest, and narration notes how shots ring out, the Scarecrow cackles in delight, and anyone within earshot simply minds their own business.
I can't help but be reminded of Spider-Man's reaction to Gothamites ignoring cries for help when he crossed paths with Pointy-ears. And this is in his hometown, no less. But hey, maybe he's busy fighting Stiltman or webbing a kick me sign to J. Jonah Jameson's back.
Chapter three's title is a turnabout on Chapter 1, A Dark Night in Manhattan. Maybe Chapter 4 will be A Man Without Fear in Central City. Anywho, Kingpin just got the news that Scarecrow has betrayed him and is now King of New York? He's taken over all of Fisk's operations already?
Crane subdues maybe a couple goons at best, and that's all it takes to supplant the most notorious crime boss in the Marvel Universe? Did we enter a time warp of some kind? Or has Wilson just been exaggerating his livelihood all these years? It's not so much a criminal empire, so much as it's a criminal kiosk at the mall.
One goon tries to deliver a package from Crane, but Kingpin's too focused on the whole traitor thing and throws him through the window, which turns out to be fortunate because the box explodes on the way down before its deliverer ever lands. This is exactly why Jimmy Johns doesn't deliver to Wilson Fisk anymore. The other guy in the room claims he was just playing along after one of the others got killed, but Fisk isn't taking any chances and decides to let some hidden remote-controlled guns take care of him. This leaves the big guy alone, contemplating all the information Crane now has on him, and how he intends to retaliate. King of New York. That geek couldn't be king of Podunk.
Having watched the 1994 Spider-Man cartoon growing up, I can say that Roscoe Lee Brown's Kingpin left enough of an impression on me that whenever I read Kingpin's dialogue in a comic, that's the voice I hear in my head. And the way he was portrayed in that cartoon, using the word geek just wasn't in his repertoire. So it just sounds weird.
After police and EMTs take away the bullet-ridden body of the first guy not to get hypnotized, Batman and Daredevil drop in. They find evidence of Crane and his gas canisters having been on the scene, but no idea where they went to. Good thing that Murdoch not only has enhanced senses, but someone nearby was watching the TV when a news flash comes up about several violent events happening throughout the city. The convenient report describes a shooting at a restaurant, a jewelry store bombing, a fire at a trendy nightclub that might be arson, and a shootout in Queens which may ignite a gang war.
Dang it. They changed the channel to The Simpsons. And it's not even one of the good seasons. Oh no. It's Lisa Goes Gaga. We have to stop them, Batman.
Dee Dee notes how all the places hit were connected to Fisk, and for all the benefits that might come with being New York's new big boss, it doesn't explain why someone like Scarecrow would muscle in. His shtick has always been instilling fear in others, and the only person who might know Crane's location is Kingpin. Fortunately, setting up a meet takes a simple phone call, but for a guy his size, Wilson's pulse is surprisingly steady, making it difficult for the lawyer to read him. Naturally, he disavows any association with someone called Scarecrow, but Dee Dee threatens that things could only get worse in the city if he doesn't cooperate. And I have to wonder if it at all hurts Bats' pride that Fisk knew he was there while his back was turned. I mean, that's kind of his thing, right? He swings in, telling himself he totally let Kingpin know he was there, and asks if he knows anywhere in the city the big guy owns or has interest in that Scarecrow could best spread his fear gas. Wilson just so happens to know that the West Side Tower would fit their description, and from what he hears, its staff is not always law-abiding. Devil asks why he's so calm when his alleged operations are being torn apart, but the only answer he gets is a direct line of cigar smoke in his face.
I can't much stand cigar or cigarette smoke as it is, so it's probably a lot worse when funky chemicals enhance your senses beyond the average person's limits. I probably would have punched Fisk in the face, but hey, that's just me.
As they swing on their way, Matt is wary of their information. He didn't detect any lies, but he still doesn't trust Kingpin. Then, sudden helicopter, which, unless it's some kind of special silent model, I'd think Batman would have heard too. It opens fire on the pair, leading them over the other side of the building, and they can see, sure enough, Fisk is the pilot, and he's headed southbound. This brings us to Chapter 4, Reign of Terror, which sees Scarecrow atop the torch of the Statue of Liberty, grimly satirizing its inscription. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free, and I will give them fear.
Insert unfortunately accurate political joke here.
When a chopper approaches, Scarecrow opens fire, while its pilot decides to state the obvious, saying that he's the statue. because he already eliminated any of the buildings he could have been in. Apparently, hitting the windshield was enough to engulf the aircraft in fire, so Fisk jumps for Lady Liberty's crown. Meanwhile, Daredevil and Bat tourists are taking a boat to their location, reminding us that there's a storm on the way, which will work in Crane's favor, better to disperse the gas, dissolving in the rainfall and causing mass panic. As an irritated Kingpin makes his way to the usurper of his position, the vigilantes arrive, making short work of the guard goons, and head up the structure, Bats taking the crown and Dee Dee heading to the torch. Funny how the blonde guy that won't take orders is keen to give them out, huh? Fisk Kool-Aid Man's his way inside, fighting Batman so he can deal with Crane personally. Murdock beats him to the punch. Literally! As able-bodied as Pointy-ears is, Fisk is a lot faster for a man his size, even if it is mostly muscle, so he provides a lot more challenge. Daredevil is this close to subduing Scarecrow when he's hit with,
in a surprise twist, perfume! Because somehow he found out Daredevil was actually afraid of those ladies that randomly spray people at the mall without permission.
Immediately, Matthew is swarmed with haunting images, with terror threatening to overwhelm him. But he's not called the man without fear for nothing. He begins to laugh, to Crane's surprise, then kicks the villain over the edge, narrowly ensnaring him in his baton line. Which is good news, since Batman was having trouble dodging Kingpin in such a confined space. Fisk then ends his aggression, insinuating that if they attempt to use the law against him, he'll suggest the crime fighters were working with Scarecrow to gas the city, and that he'd learned Batman's identity when lawyers demand he make a court appearance. Not sure how that would work. I mean, the continuity in this story is a little up in the air as it is, but I think it's around the time where it was common for people to consider Batman an urban legend. I don't know how great a defense that'll be when there's still all of Murdoch's data on Fisk's operations, though no explanation as to what happened to that briefcase after Scarecrow got to it, so maybe it's just lost in the ether now. As they take their boat and the deranged doctor back to Manhattan proper, they lament how Kingpin will likely walk, but Scarecrow cost him weapons, manpower, and money, and he may have some explaining to do to the cops. As Fisk is seen staring angrily at the rain, presumably still stuck on Liberty Island, the heroes agree that you win some and you lose some, more than Bats would like to admit. Welcome to the club. Club Humanity.
Which is an odd line, contextually speaking, to close out on a story that I would say is overall fun to read, but kind of feels less polished than its predecessor.
Pacing wasn't too bad, except the notable point of when Batman ran that truck off the road. There were a few conveniences to move the story along, like the newscast and Crane just happening to have the right amount of payment for Catwoman sitting in a locker somewhere. But the biggest head-scratcher was how Scarecrow took over Fisk's citywide empire so quickly. It would have taken the Flash more time to do that, and Crane seems to do it within a few hours. I knew he had information on Fisk's dealings and some of his men, but still it seemed a little too rushed. The whole spread fear shtick aside, which he could do anywhere, I'm not sure why Scarecrow would do this in the first place. And not just because Gotham and New York City are so similar as to be a very lateral move on Crane's part.
This version of New York has all kinds of chaos going on all the time. General gang violence, mutants, aliens, evil organizations. Scarecrow's efforts just feel like small potatoes that he guards from scavenger birds by standing in a field.
I feel like it would have made more sense to just straight up release the fear gas at the Statue of Liberty, but for some reason he decided to add extra steps. The idea of someone as formidable as Kingpin, who's gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Spider-Man and Daredevil, fighting Batman had a lot of potential, but it was just called on account of their mutual foe being subdued. I did enjoy the art. Bats and Dee Dee's not-so-friendly working relationship had some funny moments, and I thought that Alan Grant's narration added a fitting tone to the story, even if sometimes it left me a little quizzical. While I've never been the biggest Daredevil fan, I liked how he literally laughed off the fear gas. Though I suppose it'd be debatable if his enhanced senses make him more susceptible to it, or perhaps provide a better-than-average defense. I also noticed they left out the bat on Batman's symbol here. Wonder if someone got fired for that, or merely beaten with a sack of doorknobs.
The first crossover established that Batman and Daredevil are similar, and they can work together, but they're not friends. And this story doesn't really go much further in that regard. We did get a nice fight between Batman and Kingpin, which I think we could have seen more of, but while this was nothing earth-shattering, it is neither a bad read. I'd give it more of a tepid recommendation. I'm the Angry Spork, and man, have I got issues.